This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Zehr. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 546. This is your spoiler-free place for Star Wars community and conversation. I'm your host, Dan Zehr, thrilled to be talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. You can support Coffee with Kenobi by following the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Please help spread the word by tweeting that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. Coffee with Kenobi is a proud member of the Spreaker Prime program. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. If you are interested in a no-cost, no-obligation quote for your next vacation, check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and let them know Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zehr sent you. I also want to thank our incredible members of the CWK Alliance. Find out how you can join the Alliance for as little as $1 a month and get access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and much more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. On today's show, Albert Padilla and Jay Krebs join me to talk about the women of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Disney Plus series that has set the internet ablaze. There are so many great characters to talk about, so pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about the women of the cast of Obi-Wan Kenobi are two guests. One is a returning guest and one is a brand new guest. First, let's bring in returning guest from Podcast Stardust, Jay Krebs.
Hello, how are we doing tonight, guys? I'm so glad to be here once again.
It is great to have you for sure, Jay. We, of course, love you and Dennis on Podcast Stardust and are excited to have your input on this one. Now, our other guest for today's show, he is no stranger to Star Wars podcasting. He is from the Cantina Cast, Mr. Albert Padilla. Albert, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. Looking forward to talking about the women of Kenobi, specifically Satine. Or that's what we're talking about, right? Or, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I think not.
Yeah. She's got to be in there somewhere in the back of someone's mind.
Well, yeah, she wasn't even mentioned on the show. Maybe she was in like a locket that he was wearing or something. Like that. That's how rumors get started, guys.
Yeah,
that's how rumors get started. All right, so I think overall we're going to talk about probably 4 of the female cast of Obi-Wan Kenobi. There may be a few honorable mentions that we throw in there. But Jay, just sort of overall, what did you think about the series Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Oh, it was the gift that just kept on giving. You know, it was one of those things that honestly going into it, I was a little ambivalent about how I would feel with the way that it approached certain themes and certain relationships and how it would affect my viewing of A New Hope. And in the end, it's just, gosh, something that I never thought I always needed, and I did. And it was just, yes, such a gift. So enjoyed it a lot.
You know what? I'm not surprised. Albert, what about you?
I would echo everything Jay said. I mean, I'm one of those people that really, really loves Star Wars. I won't say that I love Star Wars because there's certain things that I feel like this series, probably could have done differently or just didn't sit well with me. But I really, really love Star Wars, and it was hard not to watch a series and just have a smile on your face, beginning to end, so much more in depth than I thought we were going to get, right? I'm thinking we're going to get 5 episodes of Kenobi fighting Vader, right? And at the end of the day, we got such a deep, enriching story, and specifically, to bring it back to the topic tonight, some really powerful, strong women, and seeing that origin of Princess Leia Organa as the rebel, as the leader, and a number of other things that we'll get into a little bit. So overall, I walked away just as happy as can be and glad that we finally got to see this.
I love that. I love the series as well. I liked it. I don't know if I liked it more than I expected. I had really high hopes for this one. And I try to sort of avoid that, to try to curb my enthusiasm. Thank you, Larry David. But I loved it. And I think one of the things I loved about it was it did enrich the saga, as we talked about last week on Coffee with Kenobi, and then both of you have talked about on your shows as well. But it made me love and appreciate Obi-Wan Kenobi even more as a character. I always liked him, but because of Ewan McGregor's performance, I thought it raised the stakes for me as far as my love for the character. It also made me really feel like Darth Vader is even more nasty than we've ever seen. And that kind of changes my perspective on him, but I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for the amazing women of this series. And I feel like we could make a strong case, a nice conversation about Moses Ingram, who plays Reva, naturally, about Tala, played by Indira Varma, about, of course, Princess Leia, young Princess Leia, played by Vivian Lyra Blair. And then I thought it would be nice to throw in Aunt Beru herself, Bonnie Piesse, Piesse. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Why don't we just start? I think I'd like to save Reva for the end because I feel like she's got something really cool that I want to talk about. But let's just talk about our Princess Leia Organa. Vivian Lyra Blair, talk about big shoes to fill. Because Carrie Fisher, of course, was so iconic and is so iconic and so beloved. And I'm sure, it's been said that there was certainly talk or speculation about, will another actor play Princess Leia in Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker? Ultimately, they decided not to do that. I really like how Leia was in this because they used digital Carrie Fisher. And it was approved by Carrie Fisher's family. And it worked out beautifully. That being said, how could you possibly recast Leia? Well, what if she was a child? What if she was 10 years old? Jay, talk about Leia in this series. You can talk about the acting, but just the character in general and what worked for you and maybe what didn't.
Well, as you know, Dan, I've had a very long-standing relationship with Leia. She was my first role model growing up. When I saw this movie way back when I was 7 years old in 1977, and I basically modeled a lot of my self-esteem and just growing up after Leia, and that bravery and that beautiful mix of poise and leadership and everything else. And honestly, with Obi-Wan Kenobi series, I didn't realize that we were getting so much of Leia. And I don't think any of us did. And I think that if I would have known that going in, that I may have had a little bit of a different feeling on the outset, as you said, how can someone possibly fill those shoes? And realizing that, yes, it's a different era, it's a different time, but I tell you what, I have to really tip my hats to the writers and to that adorable little actress, Vivian Lyra Blair, for bringing her to life, because this truly is, for me anyways, the embodiment of what Leia would have been at that age. And had I been that age watching this as well, that it just would have been an out-of-body experience almost. So I really do appreciate what they did. I think that her whole appearance and everything that she represented was just completely spot on for me.
Albert, what about you?
Well, this one, I mean, my goodness, I've got, as a father who has an 8-year-old daughter, there was so much of Leia that her characteristics, whether it was the snarkiness, the sneakiness, the sassiness, the outspokenness, the determination, and at the same time, being able to display levels of compassion that you would only expect from someone who's much more mature, having gone through a lot of life experiences, right? We got to see all of that. And I look over at my daughter as we're watching this, and she's just completely enveloped, just like Jay was talking about, right? This is given her new context. It's recontextualized her love for Leia, because right up until the series, she loved Leia because Dad loved Leia. But this was her first opportunity to see this young budding child, young girl that she could relate to, who was all the same characteristics of her. So from that perspective, I just really love the fact that they gave us, again, this kind of origin story. And there's actually, and hopefully we can get into this, but if you really pull back the layers, there's actually kind of a character arc that she goes through, right? She starts off as this, a reluctant character who doesn't want to be a senator. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't believe that she's Organa. She's got people telling her that she's not an Organa. And she's very quick to trust people And by the very end of this, we finally see her accepting who she is to the point where she no longer even really needs or feels like she needs to know more about her real mother and father, right? She tells Kenobi, nope, I'm fine. I'm good. And not only that, but now we see that she's now has a new purpose, right? The inspiration that came from Tala, her connections with Kenobi, all of that in really accepting who she is and even saying, I'm going to go ahead and become a senator, right? I'm going to do it my way, which is very Leia of her, but accepting that she is going to, that is her destiny and that she can do some good in that role. And maybe having that little hint of, doubt and not always trusting people and not so quick to, to kind of make yourself vulnerable in that way. All of those characteristics, I think, play into making her one of the most incredible leaders that the rebellion will have in years to come.
Here, here.
Well said.
Yeah, very well said. I remember, of course, we all watched this. I'm pretty sure we all watched this at Celebration, right? Because that's when it came out. They dropped the first 2 episodes together. I vividly remember watching this first episode for the first time, and they do that cut scene. And at first, I thought, "Wait, are we on Coruscant?" No, this seems too happy. I went, "Whoa, this is Alderaan! Whoa, look at that! Oh my gosh, we're gonna see Leia!"
Yeah.
I have goosebumps now because that was so spectacular. I wasn't expecting that at all. I had the good fortune to interview the cast and Deborah Chow before the series aired, and they were all perfect sabacc players. They didn't reveal anything at all.
Of course.
Yeah.
And when I realized Leia's going to be in this and she's going to be prominent, I was thrilled. I realize there's a risk when you're going to portray a legacy character and have a different actor play them, but this was the 100% the way to go. Vivian Lyra Blair was transcendent. Look, she's doing things at the age of 9 and 10. I'm not sure how old she was when she actually filmed this, if she was 9 or 10 when she filmed it. I'm really not sure. Maybe she was even 8. I'm completely unclear on that. What I know is that she was magnificent.
Yeah.
Acting is hard. It's hard.
Yes.
People don't understand how difficult it actually is. Not only did she nail the spirit and the soul of Leia, but she made it believable of where she is and where she was going to go. As you both said, all of the traits were already there. She's stubborn, she's resolute, she's focused, she's determined, and she's almost fearless, in all very believable childlike ways. And it was her, I feel like, as a perfect foil to Obi-Wan Kenobi, she brings out the best in him.
Yeah.
And I feel like he helps to bring out the best in her. Although she's already got that pretty well ingrained, she was amazing. She was amazing. And I can't wait to talk to Claudia Gray again. As I know, Albert, you had her on the stage with you for the Star Wars Celebration podcast stage. I can't wait to see what she thinks about this performance because it was pretty spectacular. So while we're talking about Leia, let's talk about her relationship with her mother. Jay, I'm going to throw this one to you.
Well, I think with Leia and Brea, well, I didn't realize that rhymed. Brea has always been very honest with her. She and Bale both, that she was always knew she was adopted, but that she was always loved with all of their heart. And for, anyone that may not know that backstory of why they had to adopt in the first place was because Brea had basically lost her heart and lungs climbing a Penza Peak there on Alderaan. And so this was their only chance at having a daughter. And so, of course, at first, when we see Leia kind of pulling the wool over her eyes, and she's a little bit annoyed at the fact that they've got these cousins coming, this family's coming, and what is she doing? But yet she does it in such a gentle way. And she and Bale both do with Leia, I feel. And, there's times where I'm sure that they could have gotten extremely annoyed with what she was doing, but they realized that, again, as you said, Dan, that she is an extraordinary child. And she is in a lot of ways a prodigy, because she is so mature for her age. And so there's certain liberties that they probably do have to take with her a little bit. And not just because she's adopted, you know what I mean? Not saying that, we're going to treat her extra special because she's adopted and we don't want her to feel bad. It's because they realize and they want to nurture those special qualities and that chance for her to go even further. And I just thought it was so adorable when Leia hugged her in that very first episode, and she's like, I can feel you doing that, when Leia was trying to get Lola back. And so, and then at the end, when she's like, is that a holster? I love it, and so she really was so incredibly supportive. And I think she was a pivotal part in creating the personality and the woman that Leia eventually did become.
There's so much symbolism. I know I talked about this a lot last week. There's so much symbolism with that empty holster, but still having the holster.
Oh, yeah.
Albert, how did you? I guess we can even. We'll certainly can talk about Bail too, Jay. So we'll certainly give you a chance to talk more about that if you'd like to. But Albert, I feel like the connection she has with her mother, I think, is a really, really nice touch. And we never really get to see Brea in live action. When you see her, like you see a picture of her holding a baby at the end of Revenge of the Sith, but that's not really much of anything. Here we get a little bit more of the picture. I think it really fills it in well.
Yeah, I would, and I agree with Jay. Just that enablement and the consciousness to acknowledge that they have a special child on their hands, right? Well, for all the Force reasons, which we don't need to get into. On top of that, just her innate ability. I mean, she's operating at a very intellectual level. She's extremely smart, and so and being able to kind of give them that space to be creative and kind of grow into their own is super important. And it's such a huge parenting skill that I struggle with, to be quite frank. Right? I mean, you got to be bigger than that to do that. So for something like that is remarkable. And it goes back to also that line, when they're walking in the hallway, her and Bail, and Brea says, he says, she, what she's like. And she says, I know who she's like.
Mhm.
Right. And so taking on those characteristics of both of them, but the relationship with her and her father, that's where I could really relate with, because I know my daughter to be very sneaky. I know she can get whatever she wants from me. I mean, I'm completely wrapped around her finger at the end of the day, right? But at the same time, we have a very kind of relationship that's very different than mom's relationship. And I could see similarities in that regard. I thought this was really evident when they're in the market and Kenobi's buying her that green cape. And he's like, she's got the gloves, and he's like, no, we're not getting the gloves. And she just kind of stares him down like, you're really going to say no to me buying gloves? And he's like, all right, we'll take the gloves too, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've been in that position where I'm like, okay, I just give in because she's too cute, or I just want to make her happy, and I can see all the good in her and that sort of thing. So, it's a very special relationship. I mean, she's just got such a great relationship with her parents, and that's such a wonderful thing to see in Star Wars, because how many bad relationships are there, right? I don't think we talk enough about the really good ones, and this is a really good example. And it was really wonderful to finally see that relationship that she has with them. It is very genuine, right? Even if she is adopted, they don't treat her any differently than you would expect them to, because she's not technically an Organa. She is, and that's what he says that in the episode, and he truly means that.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard from so many people about how much they've appreciated this series and how it emphasizes whether you're adopted or not, your family. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's been a long time since we've really had that kind of a message. We never really had it fully in Star Wars. This really brings it to life. I mean, she just happens to have 4 parents. 2 of them she knows. 2 of them died or turned to the dark side, but when she was a baby. So she didn't have that luxury. She didn't have that option. I really applaud Star Wars and the film creators of this for doing that, because it's been really great to see. And what I like, and you touch on this, Albert, I like that they treat her like a child and a princess, but that's kind of where it ends, right? Her lineage and her birth parents certainly make it seem like, okay, she's a Skywalker. That's why we got to keep her secret, because she's not safe, and that's true. But they also train her to be and raise her to be just a child who's special because she's special, because she's a child, because she's their child, because they love her. And she's got certain responsibilities that she will grow into because she's royalty. And that is understood and expected and reasonable. But there's not pressure, because they still let her be a kid. And that's evident because of the way that they do let her get away with some things that we talked about, because they still let her be a child. And I feel like that's kind of why she's able to grow and change and learn how to resist and do it the right way, with tact, with personality, with grace. And as she gets older, with patience. And that's amazing. She's just really well-rounded, and her relationship with her parents, I think, is pretty special. So we can come back to Leia if you want to, but I would like to move on to, I think, perhaps the breakout star of the series. To me, that would be Tala. Tala, who is one of the characters that we meet. I believe it's the third episode, right?
Yeah.
Third episode.
Yeah.
I think that's correct.
That's when she comes off
played
the
by
Imperial.
Yes, played by Indira Varma. She is an extraordinary character that we meet that helps Obi-Wan and Leia on the path, literally and figuratively. Jay, talk about this character and what she means to you.
Well, what I really appreciate about Tala is that she was able to change paths. And we see this so much in Star Wars recently, I think, that we appreciate that there wasn't just all bad guys and just all good guys, and that everyone just sort of fell into these neat little lines as one or the other. And we've seen this in Rebels, and it's with people like Agent Callus who cross that line. And then we're also seeing that in Resistance, and signing up for something that they thought was a worthwhile cause and where they thought they could do some good, and then realizing that, oh gosh, this is not the way that I want to live. This is not the path that I want to follow. And so Tala recognized that, and she felt like she could do a whole lot more good on the other side. And then being a spy was just absolutely perfect. And, I felt for her. I mean, there were so many nail biting times where I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to get caught. This is going to be bad. What is she doing? But she really was selfless in that way, that she felt like she needed to give back. And gosh, I love her character because she was selfless in a lot of ways. And she was just willing to just do whatever she needed to do to help.
Howard, what about you?
Well, to tack on to what she said there at the very end, what Jay was talking about at the very end about being selfless. If you think about it, to me, Tala came across as kind of like the prototype. In a lot of ways, I think she influenced Leia. Everything from her look at the very end, right? She was kind of mimicking, mirroring Tala's look. Everything from about that to her traits, being selfless, helping people that could not help themselves, willing to lay down her life for others, knowing that the need of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And really almost to some extent that we have time to sorrow later, right? How many times did Leia have to push her feelings off to the side because, there was a greater mission in front of her, and that mission always came first. And those are qualities that I could see in Tala. And I feel like Leia was defined by some of those things, right? Being in the midst of what was happening and having been influenced by somebody like that to the very point where she finally gets a holster with markings on it, right? Nonetheless, of all these children that she saved, as a reminder of that sacrifice, that ultimate sacrifice that Tala made, I thought was beautiful. And the fact that she still is running around with that holster, I have in my headcanon that at some point when Leia first gets her very first blaster, she names it Lola because she puts Lola in the holster, and now she gets her first blaster. She names it Lola so that she can actually pull out Lola, right? That's me making stuff up. But I would like to think that that's the case, but that influence is there for her. And going back so away from Leia, just quickly with Kenobi, I mean, she gave Kenobi the advice that he really needed to hear. She said some things you can't forget, but you can fight to make them better. And you think about where he was at that point when he was meeting up with Tala, he was pretty down in the dumps. He was already down in the dumps, as it were, right? But the fact that they, nobody was coming for them, he was getting frustrated. This wasn't going the way it was supposed to. She was kind of that conscious voice that said, look, you've got to pick yourself up and use that to your ability, use that to the benefit of everyone else, and not be drowning in your sorrows and that sort of thing. And this was echoed later on with Reva as well, right? That, she couldn't forget those things, but she could make them better. And they both had choices to do that. But Tala was kind of representative of that voice, that conscious voice of, we've got to be able to do better. We can make a difference, one person at a time.
I'm glad you brought up her relationship with Obi-Wan. That to me is a center point, a centerpiece of this entire series. She has great impact on him. Her sage advice, her calm. She's also resolute and determined, but not foolhardy. She's brave, and you could say reckless, but can you be reckless if you're in the Inquisitorius and you're trying to rescue Leia from that? I mean, you've got to take those chances, and she does it without complaint. And when even though she has fear, she keeps it inside and it doesn't dictate her life, but it's not her compass. I love that. Her bravery, her example clearly is impactful to Leia. And I like what you said, Albert. Maybe we should have her. That should be the new headcanon for all of us, naming that blaster. It's really impactful and important that she's only around for really 3 episodes. That's it. But when she's there, she dies in the 5th one, right?
Yeah, she died.
Yeah, she does. I expected that. I feel like less is more, and I hope we get like a lot of backstory on Tala, how she ended up in this place. We know she had to make sacrifices. We know she experienced loss. You can't be in this world, this era of Star Wars without experiencing that in some way, shape, or form. So hopefully we will get some of that, whether it's a book or a comic, or maybe she'll get her own Disney Plus series. That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. What I know is that for a very short amount of time, when she was in this story, she left a big mark, not only on Obi-Wan and Leia, but on us as fans, because of the way she conducted herself, because of her goals, and she's just insanely cool too. I mean, let's not forget, she's insanely cool. Jay, she'd be a cool character to cosplay as.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And, I often wonder too, and maybe you guys know the answer to this. How did she end up with Ned? And not to change the subject or, go off on a tangent here, but is there a backstory on that whole relationship with Ned and how they ended up there at the path?
If there is, we haven't heard it yet.
Okay.
Not officially that I'm aware of.
Because that's very, very similar to a Cassie and K2 kind of a relationship.
Certainly.
Oh yeah, I shipped them the minute I saw them. I mean, it was over. I was like, this is happening. So getting that last scene where they came to each other and kind of died together was just beautiful and poetic and
it was
sad and tragic at the same time.
Haunting. Yeah, it really was.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. I was disappointed that when they did the retro versions of these figures, they didn't make one of Tala. I hope that they do at some point because she's great. And I think a lot of fans really, really like her too. So why don't we take a quick break? We return. We're going to talk more about the cast, not the cast. Well, yes, sure, the cast, but the women of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus. I'm Dan Zehr, and this is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
We are back talking about the women of Obi-Wan Kenobi. We've talked about Leia and a little bit about her mother, Reva, and we've also talked about Tala. So now let's switch it up and let's spend some time talking about Reva. Reva exploded onto the scene. We knew about her pretty right away because when we started getting images from Entertainment Weekly, we knew there was going to be a new Inquisitor. And it's Moses Ingram's character of Reva. Tell me what you think about Reva, Jay. I mean, obviously she goes through her own arc. She grows, she changes. She is what? What do you think of her?
I think the first word that comes to mind is captivating. And the reason I say that is because on the surface, she is the one that you love to hate. And you're rooting for her downfall. You're rooting for her to be overcome. But you know that there's something brewing underneath the surface that you're not quite sure exactly what's going on. And I think we all kind of hypothesized in that very first episode that she may have been one of those Padawans that we saw during Order 66. And it wasn't until later when we realized that that's who she was and that's what she was fighting to get back at was Vader, and that whole idea of revenge and trying to put some sort of a cap on it. And she thought she was doing it for the sake of the rest of the younglings that had perished. And as Obi-Wan helped her to realize that what she ended up doing actually brought them peace instead. And I have to say, it wasn't until my son started playing Jedi Fallen Order and I watched all of the cutscenes, which I am totally in love with that story. Let me just say, as an aside, I think I've watched that on YouTube like 4 or 5 times, that I understood what it meant to be an Inquisitor. Because when they were first introduced to us in Rebels, we didn't really understand the backstory. We just knew that they were the baddies and they were kind of taking the place of, the hand or the assassin for the Emperor and working with Vader, but we didn't understand their origins completely. And I empathize with her so much in her loss and in her anguish. And I just think Moses Ingram did an amazing job of just encompassing that full range of emotions throughout this entire series. And I loved her as a character arc. And I'm really hoping that we do actually get to see more of her. And I do have a question. Did she get actually impaled by Anakin / Vader in the temple the first time? And was she modified to be able to survive that?
No, I don't think she gets hit. I thought she just feigned unconsciousness, or because she was scared.
I think she was, and the way I read it was she was impaled. We've kind of been theorizing on the Cantina Cast that really this is another example of dark side people tapping into their emotions. How about that?
Mhm.
And the hate that she had for what was going on, and that was enough to kind of get her by temporarily. And I think we see that as an example again later on when Vader stabs her. Right, she's driven by that hate, by that revenge, and that's enough to kind of keep her going one more time. But yeah, I think she was, in my opinion, I think she was stabbed and was able to survive.
So what about her character in general for you, Albert?
Well, so here I'm going to give you some of the traits, and I want you to let's put Reva to the side for just 1 second, okay? Who am I describing here? Impulsive, reckless, brash, confident, aggressive, led by their emotions, unorthodox, leads by way of intimidation or passion, fearless, forthright. When you hear those things, you can't help but think of Anakin Skywalker. And we did an entire we did a character spotlight that was almost 2 hours long on just Reva alone. And we were really tapping into a lot of the parallels that we see with her and Anakin Skywalker's journey. And to be honest, when she was introduced, I thought this was going to be a cautionary tale. She was not going to make it out of this series alive, right? And I was completely blown away. My expectations were blown away in that regard because I really want to see more of her character. But she lives this life of loss for so long, very similar to Anakin, all the way to the parallels of coming back from the desert and having a Skywalker in their hands, right? I mean, you can go on and on about these different things. But yeah, I mean, she's just a powerful character. And credit to Moses Ingram, one, for withstanding the feedback that she was getting that was unfair by any stretch of the imagination. But two, giving us that performance that she did in that last episode. I mean, I posted that she shut the critics up. I mean, you cannot objectively go into that and see her performance and how powerful she was in those very subtle, quiet, intimate moments at the very end when she's talking about, have I become him, right? And in that real tender moment that she has with Kenobi, I mean, those are like, these guys were acting their butts off in that scene. And to me, that was kind of the defining moment for her where I just said, holy bananas, I really need more of Reva, and I cannot believe that she lived, and I can't wait to see what comes next for her.
When I watched her blow up the screen in the first episode, I honestly never thought, oh, she is from the Jedi Temple. I never thought anything about where she was from or who she might be. So it kind of surprised me. I try not to let myself think that way anyway, because you just never know what's going to happen. So I found her frustrating and dangerous, but fairly early on. First of all, I love the design of the lightsaber. It's too bad the HasLab thing didn't get fully funded because that was a really cool lightsaber.
Oh, yeah.
Just for the record. But it was pretty early on that the way that she acted sometimes, when she obviously knew that Anakin Skywalker was Darth Vader, like that was an interesting mystery to me. And I wasn't worried about how it fit or how it lined up because I knew the story hadn't been told yet. But I knew there was something more to her than just being a big bad with a cool lightsaber and a lot of Force swagger. I knew there was more. And then it was in the episode 4, part 4, where she has Leia and she keeps interrogating her, and Leia more than holds her own. That's just a great scene in itself, which I guess we could have talked about a little bit more earlier in the show. But she seems so reluctant to hurt Leia, to try to extract any information from her by force. And she kept delaying it. And I remember thinking, she doesn't want to hurt her. There's some hope here for this character. Reva is nasty, and she's killed a lot, but she doesn't want to hurt Leia. There's got to be something to it. But I didn't really know what it was. It just gave me hope. Hope is an important fulcrum in Star Wars, as we know.
Oh, yeah.
And then as we start to see her story, first of all, her fight with Vader is unforgettable just because of the power of Vader and the frustration that must feel for her. I described it on a previous Coffee with Kenobi as like the bully that holds your forehead while you're running towards him and you can't get him.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what it seemed like.
Yeah.
But the fact that they left her alive, these two nasty, the Grand Inquisitor and Vader, the fact that they leave her alive, they don't finish her off because they don't think she's a threat and they taunt her and just leave her alone to die. The fact that she comes back from that and everything that happens in part 6 and her wonderful conversation with Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was so meaningful and moving, show the power of redemption, which is, again, another very important trope in Star Wars and storytelling. That makes her stand out.
Yep.
Not just that she goes from bad to good, but how she does and why she does. The fact that she is given very much absolution, yes, from Obi-Wan, but really more from herself. She saves Luke. At first she's mad, but she can't bring herself to do it. Even in the fact that she's afraid that she's going to be like Vader, and in fact she's less like Vader than ever because of saving a child. It's just great. Before part 6, I was at peace with not seeing Reva again just because I like seeing new characters. And I didn't have anything against Reva. I really liked her. And I really liked Moses Ingram. I felt very fortunate that I got to interview her on the show. And I just knew that she had that something. So when I see how she kind of brings things together and figures it out and starts to create a new path for herself, and the fact that Tatooine is full of buried lightsabers all over the place throughout the history of Star Wars is pretty
So
great.
true.
Yeah. So
metal
that to me, right? No matter what era of Star Wars you're in. So that makes me want to see more of her because those sort of doubts and those fears and that trepidation, that doesn't go away. It's always there, but it's how you handle it and how you continue to take steps and move forward daily, weekly, monthly, yearly for the rest of your life. And I can't wait to hopefully see what that means. I thought she was a great standout and I loved her.
Yeah. Her story kind of speaks to thematically the idea of free agency that we see in Star Wars throughout all of it, really starting with Luke Skywalker, right? Going down, choosing a different path and not going down the path of his father. We see that more recently with like Dathan in Shadow of the Sith coming from as a Palpatine, deciding to abandon that and go about his own way, raising a beautiful family again there. It's just on and on of Rey Skywalker, right? Who you get to choose. And that's exactly what Kenobi says at the end of the episode is you have a whole life ahead of you. Who you were no longer matters. You can choose to become someone completely different. And that rebirth is so powerful for somebody like Reva, given she was driven by such like revenge and led by anger and hate. And that leads to suffering. And that's really where she was. She led a life of suffering and she was now absolved of that. That was all free. And for her, clouded by the dark side, she's got a million things that she can do right now. I really hope that, not to speculate, but I would love to see her get more involved with the path and being able to, save lives like Tala was, put notches in her own kind of pouch later down the road. But I kind of see that happening there. Or maybe she pairs up with somebody like Quinlan Voss. And, she's a very powerful character in that she knows the inner workings of the Inquisitorius as well. So who better to have on your side to kind of take that establishment down, or at least put be a thorn in the side of them. So she's got a lot of potential here and a lot of different ways that she could go.
I agree. I love that. I think that I never thought about the idea that she was the ultimate sort of double agent. Although that wouldn't work now because Vader knows, but the fact that she would have that insight, she could certainly help the path. That, that sounds like a pretty great pitch for a Disney Plus series. Disney, if you're listening. Albert's got something.
He sure does. And just a springboard off of that, and I think those are all amazing, amazing observations, Albert, for sure, is that, even though she does have the whole world as her oyster, so to speak, sometimes that can be really daunting and overwhelming for some people. And if you think about it, Reva has been pretty much institutionalized her entire life. Yep. She was either part of the Jedi, she was a youngling, she was in a very exclusive kind of training situation. And then she was so self-guided in the way that she was so bent on revenge. And that was her one and only focus. And now to say, you can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want. That's both a blessing and a curse for some people.
Mm.
So yeah, I am so into the psychology of different characters. And I think that Reva is definitely one that, if given the opportunity to watch her in the future, would be a fascinating case study for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Here, here. It certainly would. Well, let's talk with the remaining time. Let's talk about Beru. Now, we only get to see Beru in one episode. In fact, after a while, I thought, are we going to get to see Beru? Are we going to get to see her? And we do. And we do. Albert, we'll just change things up. Well, let's let you start. Why don't you kick it off for us? Tell us what you thought about Beru and what we learned about her through this series.
Well, she's the ultimate doomsday prepper, and I had not had her pegged as that person, and that was kind of the really talking point for me, is just the fact that she loved Luke and her and Owen, right? Let's just get that out of the way. That recontextualized that relationship. I always saw Owen as just the grumpy old hermit, the guy, dad that was always tough on his kid kind of thing, and we see a different side of him here. But we also see a different side of Beru as well. And the fact that she's willing to fight, that is her son, that is her family. And yeah, they might not be able to make it out of here, but they're going to stand their guard. And it actually recontextualizes that scene. Like in my headcanon, they lived. Like those bodies that we see burning there, those skeletal bodies in A New Hope, I'm sorry, they got out somehow because Beru had an ultimate plan and she figured out how to get out of there, okay? But the fact that she was such a prepper, she was ready for that. She was willing to stand up for her family in the way that she did. Never would have thought that. So for just a huge amount of mad respect now for the Lars family in general, but specifically for Shotgun Beru there.
I love it.
Jay, what do you think?
Oh, Albert, you hit it on the head. I mean, Beru is one tough cookie. And, when we first meet her in A New Hope, and she's just kind of working with her little, whatever that thing was that she was putting food in and things. And, she's just the kindly old aunt and yada, yada, yada. But no, you're right. She's the ultimate doomsday prepper. She's tough as nails. I mean, she just cold cocks Reva when she comes through the door.
Right.
I mean, she wasn't having any of it. And, all of that aside, just some of the supplemental and supporting materials that we've gotten with E.K. Johnston's book, especially Queen's Hope, when we see her in that book, and that she's actually also very techie, very smart, very savvy in the way that she is trying to figure out how to decommission these bombs essentially that are in the slaves, and trying to help to figure that out. And so she's just kind of the all around, kind of woman that can do just about everything, and she's very unsung. And I'm so glad that we got a chance to see her do some of the things that she did, and I do hope that she does get some more love later on in something else as well.
I'm grateful that when we finally get her, that while we get to see some tropes that you see in a lot of things, you've got the doomsday prepper, as you both mentioned, but it didn't feel like it was forced or inorganic. It felt like a natural progression of what we picture Beru to be. We know her to be loving and nurturing. We know her to be great, whipping up blue milk for Luke. We know that's pretty much all we knew, to be honest. So when we see this, we get to see the love, which is the most important thing. The fact that Owen and Beru both have this intense love. And so, by the way, am I the only person when I'm talking about Owen and Beru, I keep wanting to say Ben and May because of Spider-Man? It just keeps happening in my brain. Anyway,
Similar.
So I love that. And I like that she has all these blasters ready and she's not afraid. She's super calm. She's sort of the driving force behind this is what we're going to do. And I really liked it a lot. Again, with all these characters, I hope we get more of them. We know we get a lot more of Leia. We get a ton of Leia throughout her history. But these other three characters, hopefully we're just seeing the start of something that will really shine for us, because the glimpses we've had, the pieces we've had, I thought have been terrific. So is there anything you want to say about these four characters, or any characters that we missed? Like other Inquisitors, for example, Jay, anybody else that you want to talk about as we start to wrap up the show?
Well, for me, we were talking a little bit off air about the fourth sister and just the fact that she didn't really actually have much screen time. I was watching earlier today on YouTube all of the compiled scenes, and she actually had just a little over 2 minutes worth of screen time. And some people say she's kind of a throwaway character or whatever, but she's got a lot of history, I know, in Legends with her look and the fact that she was eventually overcome by rebels and they stole her uniform and then went undercover with it and that type of thing. So I'm actually really intrigued by her. Her look is completely different in Kenobi than it is if you look it up in Wikipedia. So Wikipedia, of course. But I'm actually taking on the challenge of cosplaying her. So I'm hoping that as I uncover that I'll be able to learn a little bit more, and just all of the Inquisitors in general. Like I said, because of the fact that we know that they were former Jedi, most likely, and that they were probably younglings. And so they all have a backstory. So I feel like there's no throwaway characters. And I would love to see her explored a little bit more, even in comics or something.
Very cool. Albert, anything you want to mention that we haven't talked about?
I got 2 honorable mentions, and the first one's
Okay.
a shameless shout out to Christina Ariel, who played I think she's listed as the partisan fighter, although I didn't really consider them to be partisans. But she had that quick cameo where she just kind of walked on screen there in the background. So shout out to her. That was awesome. And but Minas Velti, who is the Jedi master that Reva is training under at the very beginning, I definitely would love to see that if we get a series where she is, or a series, book, whatever it is, and they're telling the story of her, turning to the light and trying to do good. If you think about where she was and what Minas actually did for her, I mean, she sacrificed her life for those younglings. And when I see Reva talk about how he killed us and she's got all this rage and revenge, that's really kind of focused on Anakin Skywalker and probably for some of the other Jedi that just left, right? Out of fear, being overwhelmed. And she saw that as a negative thing, right? She says that to Owen about family and that you don't abandon your family, you're protecting your family. But for somebody like Minas, I can see her going back and maybe reflecting on some of that relationship. And in my headcanon, again, I feel like they had a very close relationship. And she does acknowledge that Minas did lay down her life for her. And so I would like to see that as an inspiration for, even though she's on screen for all of about, 2 minutes at most during that scene. But yeah, a very selfless act. I mean, she was the pinnacle Jedi in that way, in laying down her life in the way she did. And I hope that sticks with Reva in future storytelling with her.
The nice thing about this series is that it emphasizes the things that I think George put into Star Wars initially: hope, redemption, courage under great, arduous circumstances, friendship, teamwork, and belief. Belief that things will get better, belief in the Force, belief in kindness. It's great. That's another nice thing too. There's no myth of redemptive violence here. Reva doesn't get killed. She gets redeemed, and she lives to fight another day. Obi-Wan isn't out to kill her or to chase her down. Even Darth Vader at the end, it's not really related to this topic of the show at all. Even he doesn't get a chance to do that. Now, his isn't because of compassion or a change. That doesn't come till much, much later in his career. But this show is really groundbreaking in a lot of ways, and I'm really grateful for it. I'm also very grateful for Jay and Albert for having you both on Coffee with Kenobi. Jay, please let everybody know where they can find you and your podcast.
Oh, absolutely. And guys, this has been so much fun. Dan, Albert, I'm always so happy to talk anything Star Wars. And of course, the women of Star Wars are very near and dear to my heart. So you can definitely catch myself and Dennis Keithley on Podcast Stardust. We do drop 3 episodes a week. And so we do news, reviews, discussion, basically of everything that's out there. And you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
Excellent. And please let everybody know where they can find your awesome cosplay stuff too.
Oh my gosh, thank you for that. Yes, I am at j.stipscosplay on Instagram, and you can catch me over there as Ahsoka and Hera mainly, and anything else that's, kind of up my alley at that point in time. And like I said, I'm working on that fourth sister build, and I'll be posting some work in progress really, really soon.
Awesome. Albert, thank you, by the way, for being on Coffee with Kenobi. I would love to have you back on the show anytime, my friend. Please let everybody know where they can find you and the Cantina Cast.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you so much, Jay, too. It was great to finally kind of talk to you. So You can find me at Albert M. Padilla on Twitter. And shameless plug, if you go to my profile, I have a little video that I made. It's a tribute to Leia from the Kenobi series with some dialogue spliced in and that sort of thing. So I won't spoil it, but go take a look at it. It's very sweet, very moving in my opinion. But you can find me at Albert M. Padilla, and you can find the Cantina Cast at the Cantina Cast on pretty much every social media. We record 2 episodes every week. One's a Patreon show. The other's kind of a general release. But if you join the YouTube, you can view those live. Anybody's open to come in. And we have a really good time interacting with all of our viewers and answering questions on the fly and stuff. It's a really engaging kind of show. So please stop by. We'd love to see you.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are with Dan Zehr, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
That's going to do it for this week's show of Coffee with Kenobi. I want to thank Albert and Jay for joining me to talk about the women of Obi-Wan Kenobi. A great conversation, and I look forward to your thoughts. Please let us know what you think in our Facebook group, the CWK Cafe. I also want to thank the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. When you're planning your next vacation, if you want to go to the Galactic Star Cruiser, Galaxy's Edge, any of the theme parks, any of the cruise lines, Star Wars Celebration, or anywhere else that you want to go for vacation, they literally just helped us for London and for Paris, and we had the best time because of MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. They gave us a no-cost, no-obligation quote, and they can do the same for you at coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. Every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time is CWK Live on our Facebook page, facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. We are currently in the middle of rewatching Season 1 of Star Wars Rebels as we get through the series. Next week, on Monday, we're going to talk about Call to Action. So be sure to rewatch the show with us or watch it for the first time and get your top 5 ready, and your thoughts will be read on the show live, which is a really, really cool thing. We're really glad that we can do that in our Coffee with Kenobi community. Again, the Facebook group is the CWK Cafe. Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler and drama-free place. Coffee with Kenobi is possible because of the members of the CWK Alliance. Thanks to you, the podcast, Facebook Live, event coverage, and so much more can come to life. Find out how you can help the show for as little as $1 a month by joining the CWK Alliance, and you'll receive access to CWK Pour-Over, an exclusive weekly audio and video podcast not heard anywhere else. coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance is where you can go to join the CWK Alliance. And 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. coffeewithkenobi.com is the website for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. You can email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com. Connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zehr, MRZEHR, or on my personal Instagram, Dan Zehr CWK, and of course on LinkedIn. Coffee with Kenobi is all over social media, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok. Give the show a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, or subscribe to Coffee with Kenobi's YouTube channel. Please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Every one of those makes a big difference and helps to raise awareness for the show. You may have noticed on Coffee with Kenobi's social media this week that I posted a picture of myself in the Coffee with Kenobi hoodie, as well as my brand new phone case. If you like that, or want the logo on a t-shirt, go to coffeewithkenobi.com/shop. If you want to start a podcast or a blog, or have one and want to expand your brand, danzmedia.com is where you can go to sign up and have a one-on-one consultation with me. I'm also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. There's so much more Star Wars to come in the next few months and beyond, and Coffee with Kenobi will be there every step of the way. Thanks again so much for your time and your awesomeness. You are an important part of the Star Wars community, and I appreciate you. Thanks again, and remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.